Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 PGA Championship Initial Research Show. Hopefully you had a great double tournament week last week with the Truist and the Myrtle Beach Classic. I myself, it was okay. It wasn't too bad. I had a live outright for the Truist. Didn't have Christopher Rayton, although did play him a lot in DFS and made sure that I mentioned him a lot last week. I had Nikolai Højgaard in terms of an outright who grabbed the lead late, or at least a share of the lead, then bogeyed to fall out of contention there. And then Myrtle Beach, to be honest with you, just didn't get much right for that tournament. So it was a slightly losing week for yours truly. I hope you had much more success than I did, and are going to be able to continue the momentum into the second major of the year outside of Philadelphia for the PGA Championship at Aronimink this year. We have a lot to cover this week. A course that I haven't seen and don't know a whole lot about, so we'll go through some hole-by-hole looks at Aronimink. Of course, we've got the field to digest and look at, a little bit of research or our first look into some historical PGA data. So we have a lot to cover. Let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight moving forward are from both the Rabbit Hole over at BetSperts and Fantasy National. The Rabbit Hole is merging or acquiring Fantasy National, so I have been in the process of migrating all of my files to the Rabbit Hole formatting. But the Rabbit Hole has everything you need week in and week out for the PGA Tour to make the correct wagers, optimize your lineups. It has a tournament simulator, articles from a lot of the professionals in the industry. You really are missing out if you aren't a subscriber to the Rabbit Hole, so make sure you're doing that. You won't regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research every Monday regarding the tournament of the week, which would obviously be the PGA Championship this week. Some patterns of previous winners and things of that nature. I am going to be holding off on that for the foreseeable future until I figure out, how I want to put all of my, prior research in formatting, since I am migrating over to the Rabbit Hole. So that might be on hold for a little bit. But normally, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see the players I'm wagering with my own money, the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. Would not recommend it if I did not believe in it. I've worked with Gabe for a few years now. It's been awesome. I've learned a lot from him. I've enjoyed it immensely. Symbolized by the fact that we're doing the picks challenge again. There's a lot of great info. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, week in and week out on the PGA Tour. So make sure you're subscribed to his article and follow him over on social media. Show him some support. Lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. Again, how was your double tournament week last week? Truist, Myrtle Beach, anything and everything. Your final thoughts on those two tournaments. And then, obviously, we're here for the PGA Championship. What do you know of Aronimink? How do you think it's going to play this week? Who's your early leans? What types of players or one specific player that you might be focused on? Who do you think might struggle this week? Put your thoughts and opinions in the chat. If you're not able to catch a show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's do our initial research for the 2026 PGA Championship. We're going to start, as we always do. Good evening, Moss. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Not a bad week. It's time to make a millie. We're going to try. In fact, Rory, if he didn't have that horrendous Saturday, it was probably going to be a really good week for me, especially considering you were here last Wednesday. I was very, very high on Christopher Rayton, pretty high on Alex Fitzpatrick. So, I had a lot of very strong performing lineups this week at the Truist. Unfortunately, Myrtle Beach, which, I usually try to put a lot of effort into the alternate field events, and I usually do pretty well at them. this was not one of those circumstances. I did not get a whole lot right at that tournament. I had one lineup at Myrtle Beach that finished 13th in that 20 max entry contest that they have over there, but it's not going to pay anything because it's the alternate field event. So not a good week for me at Myrtle Beach. If you take out Myrtle Beach, I would have been the slightest of slight positive at the Truist. So it ends up being overall a negative or a losing week. I'm going to try and get back on the momentum that I had, considering I had an outright and a humongous DFS week at Doral. So glad to hear that you had at least a modicum of success. It doesn't sound like it was a horrendous week for you. We normally would start with the GCSAA tournament fact sheet, but as you can see, there's not one out for the PGA Championship. So this is several tournaments in a row now that the GCSAA has not had a fact sheet out. So nothing we can do there. So we're going to go ahead and go straight into the rabbit hole over at BetSperts. And now understand that not every single player I think is in here. I did see a moment ago over on social media that Sudarshan Yelamaraju made it into the tournament. So does... Oh, okay, there he is, yeah. So the rabbit hole might be updated. I haven't gone through literally player by player yet. Snedeker, is he in here? Yeah, so Brant Snedeker, having won the Myrtle Beach Classic, he is now in the PGA Championship. So not every single player in here, but majority of them are. The 20 PGA professionals probably won't be in here much at all, especially for what we're going to look at tonight. The most, I don't want to say famous, but most well-known, of course, being Michael Block, who did play, I thought he played a little bit earlier this year. He might not have. You see, I've got this sorted for 2026. So I won't have a lot of stats on the 20 PGA professionals that qualified to play in the PGA Championship. Good evening, Hanka. Good evening, Jank. Thanks to both of you for jumping in the chat. Much appreciated. I know you and I talked a little bit this weekend. Hanka, I got to give you your props. You were really high on Ricky Fowler last week. I was nowhere near him. He ends up playing very, very well. So I was, I wasn't there on Ricky. Still had a decent week in terms of DFS, thanks to all of the rating I played. But you're saying that Rory has your attention this week. Makes a lot of sense. It's a major. And as we go throughout the week, you'll see that Rory's skill set really thrives, particularly at the PGA, at the Masters, U.S. Opens, meaning like elite driving. So we might touch on that a little bit tonight, but more so into tomorrow for the data dive. But it's good to see you in chat. Hopefully you had a good double tournament week, Hanka. And Jank, oh, this is Derek. Okay. Hey, how's it going, Derek? This is your second channel. Hopefully you've been well. I haven't seen you much lately. Hopefully things have been, like I said, going well. You had a good double tournament week last week. Ready for the second major this week of the PGA Championship outside of Philadelphia at Aronimink. But it's good to see you, Derek. Been a long time. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. The who's who of who's who in professional golf, not just the PGA, just professional golf, is here this week. Thanks to I'm pulling this straight from Gabe's article, so credit goes to him for this little statistical nugget here. But the top 104 players in terms of the OWGR are here this week. So the best players in the world descend to the suburbs of Philadelphia. Technically, I believe this is Newton Square, Pennsylvania. Again, this is a suburb just right outside Philadelphia. At Aronimink, we have seen Aronimink before, but it was for the BMW Championship. It was not for the... We've seen it at the PGA Championship, but not in our lifetimes, or at least not in mine. Last played, I think, in 1950-something. in terms of a PGA Championship. We also saw it a couple times for the AT&T National. So what I will tell you about the 2018 BMW Championship, this was, one of the former playoff events. You only had 68 players, technically 69 players, I guess, with Paul Casey withdrawing, at the BMW. And from what I have read or researched, that this won't really be what Aronimink is this week, because apparently Aronimink was just soaked, just rained all week in the lead up to the 2018 BMW. So the course was very soft, very receptive. From what I've gathered, the course is pretty firm. The way it's designed to be, pretty firm. It's going to be a much more difficult test of golf, from what I understand. Doing a little DFS, struggling a bit. Did have Brandt Snedeker bet to win, so that saved me. Well, congratulations. Let me actually write that down, so that way I will give you your proper shout out at the beginning of the show tomorrow. So Derek with the Snedeker win at Myrtle. So congratulations on that hit. I was nowhere near Brandt Snedeker. So as I was alluding to in the intro, my DFS for Myrtle Beach was just bad. I had one good lineup, but with that being an alternate field event, it's not going to pay anything. Betting this morning at 20. Hey, winning anything is better than losing. And I was the loser. I was the loser at Myrtle Beach. So Truist was okay, but nothing to be excited about. All right, we take a look at the players in the field here for the PGA Championship. The guys that have been playing the best in 2026: Cameron Young, Matt Fitzpatrick, Siwoo, Xander, etc., etc. The who's who of who's who in golf. Let's take a look at what the Rabbit Hole has to say about Aronimink very quickly, and then we're going to go to Pro Visualizer and get a visual feel for the golf course. So bear with me. As like I said, I will make it no bones about it. I do not know much about Aronimink. I'm just being honest with you as the viewer. That's why we're going to go through Pro Visualizer, and that's why I depend on the GCSAA tournament fact sheet to kind of help me with that. So all I have to go on is this and a little bit of some visual cues from Pro Visualizer. Aronimink is a traditional par 70. Traditional in the sense that it is 4 par 3s, 2 par 5s. So not very many scoring opportunities, generally speaking. Only 2 par 5s, and a very long par 70 at that, at almost 7,400 yards. By par, this is going to be one of the longer courses that the professionals see this year. Obviously not in terms of total yardage. We've seen Doral, we've seen Torrey, Augusta National is longer than this in terms of total yardage or raw yardage. But by par, since this is a par 70, this is going to be a pretty darn long course. And we'll get into that here momentarily. Of course, located just outside of Pennsylvania, so it's in the Northeast, technically. One of the biggest things to note about Aronimink, this is a Donald Ross design. And when you see the architect, when you see the words Donald Ross, 2 things should come into mind. One is, a lot like Pete Dye, a lot of strategic positioning in the fairways or on certain holes to attack greens. And then greens are heavily sloped back to front and sideways a lot of times. So a lot of these greens, as we'll see, 8,200 square feet. These are massively large greens, like we saw at Oakmont last year for the U.S. Open. But they will not play to this size. There is a lot of contouring, a lot of slope, a lot of what you'll hear quadrants or quadranting to them, where if a player is playing fairly conservative to the quote middle of the green, the ball's going to run away from the hole and leave the player a very long, difficult lag putt to try and two putt their way to a par. So these greens will not play to the 8,200 square feet. In all actuality, they're actually pretty smaller than that in terms of playable area for that day, thanks to the spines and again the quadrants where the pin positions will be. Also of note, these are pure bent grass fairways. I don't think we've seen that much this year, if at all. Pure bent grass fairways. Now, we've seen bent grass greens at Augusta. So one of the first things that comes to mind is taking a look at maybe who putt well at Augusta this year, if we get those strokes gain data, which I believe we do. With these being very fast, very sloped, difficult greens. Sorry, I've got an itch. Difficult greens that are bent. I do like the comparison of looking at Augusta National for putting. Maybe not necessarily entirety of a comparison course, but for putting, I think Augusta National would do pretty well. Bent fairways. The rough is technically listed as fescue. That is somewhat true. The mown areas do have a little bit of overseed to them, but if you are quite wayward, think about TBC River Highlands and the tall fescue. They just let the grass grow naturally for the Travelers Championship. You're going to get that here as well, and it makes a lot of sense being in the Northeast, similar grass types. So don't be surprised to see some really, really tall, really gnarly, maybe even akin to some Scottish or British courses. The rough that looks a lot like fescue and very difficult to play out of. The mown rough is kept at 3.5 inches long, which is pretty long, but not necessarily out of the ordinary for professionals on the PGA. Now the unmown, the natural fescue, is going to be knee high or even taller, but the actual mown part of the rough is kept at 3.5 inches longer. At least it was in 2018. This was a mixed off the tee club type, and I would tend to agree with that as we go through Pro Visualizer. It was easy to gain strokes off the tee, very easy to gain strokes on approach, very easy to putt. The only difficulty, and this is all based on the 2018 BMW Championship, which, again, I'm not going to put a whole lot of emphasis in just because the course played so much more different that week, with it being essentially soaked. It was very soft, very receptive. The only difficult part of 2018 was around the green when it was difficult. I do think greens are going to be easy to hit in technicality because of how large they are. But I do think putting is going to be much more difficult this year. I think driving is going to be a little bit more difficult this year. One of the other things about Aronimink that I have read from multiple sources is that there's a lot of slope to fairways. So it is very, very rare for a player to have an even lie in the fairway. The fairways will slope, away from the hole or, towards creeks or whatever. Players will have, balls above their feet, balls below their feet. Iron play is going to be the be-all, end-all this week at Aronimink. And then scoring was listed as easy on all par 3s, 4s, and 5s. That's absolutely not going to be the case, this being a major championship. So unfortunately, we don't have the scorecard available to us here in the rabbit hole. Have no fear. I've got this. This is the PGA Championship, official site. If you see me looking off to the side over here, I am going to be looking at this site. I'm going to give you, a little probably paraphrase these paragraphs for you as we go through Pro Visualizer and get a feel visually for the course. How do PGA Championships compare to other majors when it comes to randomness? Masters is pretty predictable. On the other hand, the U.S. Open is carnage and very random, it seems like. That's a very good question. In fact, the vision will be skewed, but I do have some information for you, and we'll cover this a little bit later on who has done well and not so well at PGA Championships. So yeah, that's a great question. Without stealing my thunder or spoiling it or whatever, it's certainly not as predictive as Augusta, just because we see Augusta every year. The Masters is played at Augusta. There is a level of randomness, just because the PGA Championship, the U.S. Open, the Open Championship, they rotate courses. So, I mean, by default, there is going to be a bit of randomness there, Derek. Having said that, in my limited research, and I still have a couple of days to really, flush this out and all that. But early on in my research, I've seen a couple of key things that are consistent among PGA Championships going back to 2019. And when we go back to that Excel file, I'll explain why I'm only going back to 2019. But good question. Good question, absolutely. So let's take a look at Aronimink in terms of from Pro Visualizer. And I apologize if the hole is not centered. Again, I've got the official PGA website up. I want to give you all the kind of paragraph blurb that they give on each hole. So hole 1, 434 yards. It's a long, straight opening hole. Features a significant downhill tee shot. 4 bunkers guard the right side of the fairway, and then 1 on each side of the green. Another commonality you'll see among the holes at Aronimink, Don Ross wanted to keep the fronts open, meaning he wanted players to be able to utilize the ground game. Think Shane Lowry when he won the Open Championship. I get the feeling that Donald Ross wanted this to be similar to that. And then with certain restorations and renovations over the years, it has turned into more of an aerial game. But the original Don Ross design, I think, wanted it to be ground game focused. It says these bunkers will snag shots that miscalculate the slope. Another common thing, which will be a little bit difficult to see in this view, even though this is the 3D view, there isn't a whole lot of difference in height between the highest point and lowest point on the course, but players are going to climb and descend the rolling terrain of suburban Philadelphia quite a bit with this golf course. There are several blind and semi-blind shots just due to the natural terrain here. So that is something else that we're gonna, you're gonna hear. We're gonna focus on this week, and that's why I think approach has an even elevated level of importance this week due to the blind and semi-blind shots. Green angles back left, severely back left to front right. So there's hole 1. Hole 2, tee shot on this dogleg left, semi-blind landing area. Features a cluster of 6 bunkers, as you see there. Green is large, well sloped, bunkers guarding left and right, and a collection area beyond. So this is one of those semi-blind shots that I was just mentioning. In fact, from the tee, what's it to carry this bunker here? 298 carry. So that's reasonable for several players in the field. That said, if this is, going uphill, which it didn't say anything about, if this is going uphill, that makes it a little bit more difficult. But I get the sense that if players like Rory, Brooks, Bryson, if they are driving the ball well, they're going to be able to take advantage of this course, is the sense that I get. Par 3, 450, again, fairly straight away, seemingly. Does literally a dozen bunkers protect this hole, staggered on both sides of the fairway, forces the player to make a decision off the tee, whether to be aggressive and try to carry this bunker, or carry these bunkers, or to lay up short of them, leaving a much more difficult approach. Safe tee shot is to the right side of the fairway with a smart approach to the middle of the wide but relatively shallow putting surface. So you can see already where I'd imagine there's probably a ridge right here, and you're going to get a back right pin location that's going to be very, very, very difficult to get to, would be my guess one day. I can imagine a front pin, and this looks like it's a false front. So, interesting design there. But again, one where I think as long as players are long and straight, they're going to be able to take advantage of that hole. Hole 4, again, 457. So far, you haven't seen a whole lot of length. 457 has been the longest hole here at Aronimink so far. Continuing the run of interesting and testing par 4s, this uphill tee shot, so that's a confirmation that this is uphill. Staggered fairway bunkers on either side. Most players will be able to hit it over these bunkers and be left with a short iron into a two-tiered green. Yeah, so, this is saying 300 here from the tee. It's a 262 carry. Granted, it's uphill, but a 262 carry to that bunker. So most professionals are going to be able to pull that off. Looks like this is one of the, good scoring opportunities, if you will, but the green is tricky in the sense that there's multi-tiering. First par 3 that we come across is the shortest par 3. You can see just in the top right of your screen, 177, the shortest par 3 on the course. Classic Donald Ross par 3. Bunkers form a semicircle in front, requiring an accurate shot to get close to the hole on a challenging green complex. So it looks like there's like a spine here that's probably going to repel shots down this way or maybe this way. So, I could see a back left, maybe a front middle or front left pin, things of that nature. Again, another shorter par 4, 404 yards. Scorecard only has it at 402. A massive dogleg right, as you can see here. Going to have to play around a tree, it looks like. I don't think Rory's going to be able to take the lines that he was taking at the Truist, just going over the trees at Quail. I think you're going to have to shape a shot here. Nearly a dozen bunkers guard the right side of this short uphill par 4, beginning where the hole bends and proceeding all the way to the green. You can see that among these bunkers here. Laying up short of the 3 bunkers on the left, so laying up short of these, that just seems like a regular drive. Just going by what it says on the site. Leaves a short approach into a tricky green that has a lot of movement and challenges. So again, another short iron or even a wedge into this green here, or into these holes and these greens. So we haven't really seen a whole lot of long irons yet. 177 being the longest part, or the only par 3 we've seen, and then 457 being the longest par 4. We haven't seen a whole lot of 200 plus approaches yet. yet. Hole 7, 432. Again, pretty good sweeping dogleg right. Another short dogleg par 4 with a blind fairway. So apparently the fairway is completely blind from the tee. Interesting. Does that signify that it's uphill? It doesn't say. Emphasis here on the approach shot, hit to a severely sloped green that is well protected by deep bunkers front left and front right. Definitely a birdie opportunity is what the site says. So, all right. Hole 8, the longest par 3 on the course, 242. This long downhill par 3 can play to a variety of distances depending on where the hole and the tee is located. You see these different teeing grounds. There's one here, there's some here, even one up here. Putting a premium on club selection. The green almost connects to the 10th green. So here's the 8th green here. This is the 10th green. There's only a little short strip of fairway in between them. So again, club selection, iron play, being able to judge distance control, being able to judge your distances is paramount here at Aronimink, apparently. Hole 9, the longest hole in the course, 605. I know it says 601 here, but on the scorecard, 605, uphill, par 5. Long straight, punctuated by side-to-side clusters of bunkers. Longest hole in the course climbs steadily uphill towards the clubhouse. So it's going to take 2 really, really good lashes to get up to this green. I would imagine a lot of players are going to treat this like a true 3-shot hole. Lay up in between these 2 bunkers here would be my guess. I could be wrong with that, especially since right is no bargain and left you're in 18. So see about that. This green is one of the least severe on the course, as Don Ross originally intended this to be a long 2-shot hole. So we'll see. I have a feeling that a lot of players will treat this like a true 3-shot hole, but we'll see if I'm right or wrong. Going to the back 9, hole 10, pretty straightaway par 4. First hole that water really comes into play. I know it was there on the 8th, but you know, a professional is going to have to hit a really, really poor shot. You know, just absolutely chunk their wedge, or you know, just absolutely flare one way long to hit in this water. Now, it'd be in play for me, but for these professionals, not really. So really the first hole with water in play, water guarding the green here in the front of 10. Ideal tee shot on this long downhill par 4 will flirt with the 2 fairway bunkers right side of the landing area, and apparently slopes pretty heavily down here to the left. Again, emphasizing the fact that there are not a lot of even lies and you know, flat stances or anything like that. Pond guards the front left, which the green slopes severely and is surrounded by thick rough water and daunting collection areas. So apparently, like, the green all flows this way into the water. This is one of the most challenging green complexes on the course, per the site. Hole 11, another shorter par 4. 20 bunkers on this hole alone. Now, some of them are pretty small, but I'd imagine they're probably a good half-shot penalty among them. Distance and spin control must be precise on the short uphill approach to the green. Landing short or putting too much spin results in the ball coming back as far as 50 yards into the fairway. So, I mean, apparently this is a pretty steep fall off for this green. Another very challenging green complex that will test the best players in the world. may have missed this part if you already said it, but how long is the rough going to be this week? Without the GCSAA tournament fact sheet, it's going to be hard to say. In 2018, for the BMW Championship, it was at 3.5 for the mown part, MOWN, for the areas that were mown next to the fairways. Derek, that said, I would expect like this, like if players are really, really far offline, like this fescue here, they don't cut it at all. Think of like TPC River Highlands. You get that northeast fescue where it's, you know, knee high or even taller. It's going to be long. Now the mown parts, it's long, but it's not, you know, impossible to play out of. Professionals play out of long rough all the time. Fescue, however, that's a different story. So we'll see. But that is all the information I have for you in that, is that it's 3.5 inches long. And if the GCSA tournament fact sheet comes out later this week, we'll go from there. 12, one of the longer par 4s on the course at 466. Series of elevation changes makes this one of the hardest holes at Aronimink. Tee shot is downhill. So this is downhill to a fairway squeezed by, you know, bunkers, you know, like limiting your landing area. Mid-iron approach is uphill. So you're going, so it sounds like the tee and the green are, you know, roughly the same in terms of height, but you're going downhill into what's probably a little bit of a valley. And then your approach shot is climbing back uphill. Interesting. Elevated 2-tier green that slopes severely back to front in true Don Ross style. Ominously guarded by a deep bunker along the right. Okay. 13. This is going to be an interesting one. This is at 385 on the scorecard. And this tee box is definitely going to be used at some point throughout the week, meaning they can and will turn this into a drivable par 4 for the PGA Championship. So clearly these bunkers are out of play for the professionals, and then these bunkers will be out of play when it is set up to be a drivable par 4. So I do like that as an option this week. Shortest par 4 in the course demands an accurate tee shot into, it says, a tight fairway. It looks pretty wide from here. Yeah, 39 yards. That's pretty wide. I guess they're meaning tight fairway specifically from here to here. That's only 21 yards. That's my assumption, is that's what they're aiming at. But yeah, a layup here lengthens or widens the fairway pretty significantly. Bunkers narrow the front of the green, so expect approaches to favor the wide back half of the green. New forward tee has been built to create a reachable par 4, etc., etc. Yeah, again, one of those things where if they're playing the back tee, a carry of... Oh, gosh, that's not what I meant to do. Oh, my gosh. Let's clear that. 276 to clear that bunker. So I can see, even when they don't set it up to be a drivable par 4, when they play it, you know, straight from the back tees, I could see some players a la Bryson just taking driver regardless. But the prudent play seems to be like an iron or a fairway metal, and leave yourself with a little bit of a longer approach. A few more holes here. 14, pretty standard par 3 it looks like. Sand surrounds most of this left to right angled green on this challenging par 3. Find the middle of the green, and players will have a birdie opportunity, but missing the green will make a challenging up and down for par. So, again, approach play being highlighted in visual and in text, in description. 15, the only other par 5, the only par 5 on the back. Fairway does narrow a little bit here with these bunkers pinching in to 26 yards wide. That's pretty narrow. Pretty narrow. A new tee box has turned this. Let's see. This is 15. Oh my gosh, this isn't even a par 5. My apologies. Let's back this up. New tee box back here. Par 4, 550 yards. On the scorecard, it's listed at 546. This is a par 4. I looked at the yardage and assumed par 5. That's what I get for assuming. Long par 4. New tee box has turned this into the longest par 4 on the golf course. Tee shot should aim for the right side and use the right to left slope of the fairway. Green is one of the largest on property, and with an open front allows players to run the ball onto the green if needed. How far is it to that bunker on hole 15? And wow, that's driver and then, yeah, wood or something. So from the tee to get to the bunker is 311. That's going to be a pretty good poke. So I don't think very many players are going to be able to get to that bunker. And it sounds like, again, just from reading this description, Derek, that the fairway slopes heavily from right to left. So even if a player is on that line, it doesn't sound like they're able to run into it because the fairway is going this way. Now, players like Potgeider, Bryson, they can probably carry it into the bunker. It's just giving you the 90 to 95% of the guys are probably going to be hitting it here and then having the ball run this way, it seems like. 16, the par 5, same yardage as the par 4 before it, essentially. 555. Many contestants should be able to reach this par 5 and 2, but only if they can hit their long approach shot very high and hold the wide but shallow green. A long, deep bunker on each side of the putting surface adds to the challenge. Birdies should be plentiful. And that's on the PGA course description. So they're treating this as a pretty nondescript par 5, which I guess for professionals is true. 295. So this carry of this bunker isn't all that much, would be my guess. But you can kind of see the difference in mown areas here. Like, I could see this being like mown area here. Mown to mown maybe. Like 9 yards. And then they just let this fescue grow and grow and grow for the week. That's what it seems like, at least to me. All right, 2 more holes, 17 and 18. The second hole with water truly in play. Long par 3, 229. Designed for drama, this long downhill par 3 could significantly affect the outcome of the championship. Any ball heading to the left will likely find water as, you know, this area is shaved down to catch, you know, poor approach shots. Safe shots to the middle of the large putting surface, but will almost certainly leave a difficult 2-putt. The front right location, I'll zoom in here a little bit. The front right hole location just beyond the bunker will also create a lot of challenges. So any tee shot that is, you know, left is going to probably be repelled down into the water. Another, you know, poor approach shot right is going to land in these what seem to be deep bunkers. Just step up and hit a very, very good approach shot, iron shot, 228, 229. Lastly, the second longest par 4 on the course. Trees on both sides and a trio of bunkers on the right side. are certain to affect a player's tee shot strategy. Approaches uphill. So you're going uphill from here to here. To a large terraced green that offers many interesting hole locations. This looks like classic quadranting. Looks like you could have a back left, back right, front left. True Don Ross design. So that is Aronimink from a pro visualizer, and then, I'm trying to paraphrase what the PGA Championship site suggests or says as a paragraph for each hole. There's an overlook of the course and the routing. I'm just going to go to hole 1 if we want to take a look at it a little bit later. Well, let's go ahead and go through a few things here at the rabbit hole and see some of the players, at least early on, we might want to focus on this week. First glance, seems like the front is good, but easier than the back, but not sure how accurate that really is. Hard to say. It really is hard to say. One of the first things that I want to do, this is a Don Ross design. So let's see on Don Ross designs, and I'm going to have to back this time frame out. Let's go to 2024. Not a whole lot of rounds here. 24. I don't like going back too far, but I just want to make sure I've got enough rounds to make it statistically significant. So, other Don Ross designs. We've got the PGA Championship for 2023. That was 25, 24. Oak Hill. This is Rocket Mortgage. Is that Detroit? No, that's 3M. What's Rocket? That's a Don Ross design. East Lake. 2024's U.S. Open at Pinehurst. Sedgefield is a Don Ross design. East Lake again. Rocket Classic. It's really bothering me that I'm not thinking of that course. TPC. No, it is Detroit Golf Club. Okay. I was right. My first inclination was right. So Detroit Golf Club is a Don Ross design. So that gives you an idea of what courses are included in this subset of data. On Don Ross designs, going back, a few years to give players enough rounds to make it statistically significant. On Don Ross designs, your top performers in the field this week for the PGA Championship: Victor Hovland, Xander, Patrick Cantlay, Minwoo Lee, Cameron Young, Rory, JT Poston, Matt McCarty. It's only 2 tournaments, so a little bit less of a sample size, but he has played well in those 2 tournaments on Don Ross designs. Tommy and Adam Scott are your top 10 on Don Ross designs. Let's see. This is the Truest. Why did that go to the Truest? Let's try this again. There we go. Your top performers, and now that I've got this correctly at the PGA Championship field, I was a moron and I still had the Truest for whatever reason. All right. Your top performers on Don Ross designs in the PGA Championship field this week: Colin, Xander, Victor, Bryson. Only 2 tournaments, but he's played very well on the 2 Don Ross designs. The Oak Hill PGA, and he played well at Pinehurst. Russell Henley, Aaron Rye. You're starting to see a very, very common theme here among these players. Colin Morikawa, always one of the best iron players in the game. Xander, one of the best flat-out players, but good iron players in the game. Victor, he was always known for his ball striking. Bryson, more driving, but he's a very good putter as well. Henley, one of the best iron players in the game. Aaron Rye, one of the best iron players in the game. Brooks, Grazerman has played well on Don Ross designs. Patrick Cantlay, Minwoo Lee, round out your top 10. Scotty just outside the top 10, Matt McCarty. Cameron Young, Rory, JT Poston are your top 15. Tommy just outside of that. Players who have not been good on Don Ross designs in the field this week. I'm going to try to hit, bigger names like Jason Day. Jason Day has really struggled on Don Ross designs. Did not play well at East Lake in 2023. Missed the cut at both Don Ross majors in this time frame. So, interesting to note. Pearson Cootie, Emiliano Grillo, Sam Stevens. Not played well on Don Ross designs, but Collie Sepp Straka. Look at that. Sepp Straka, 24 rounds. Easily, enough rounds to make it statistically significant. He's not been very good on these types of courses. Bobby Mack, not very good. McNeely, DJ. So there's a look at the players who have and have not been good on Don Ross designs. Shorter hitters like Aaron Ryan, Morikawa still do very well. Probably less emphasis on distance. That's where I'm at least early on this week, Derek. Let's take a look at a couple other things here real quick, because we're already going on time, and I spent a lot of time on Pro Visualizer, but because I didn't know much about Aronimink, I just wanted to kind of go through it with you all as the viewers. So hopefully you all appreciated that. If you did, I would certainly appreciate you hitting that like button for going through the course hole by hole there. I've been using this for the past couple of weeks, considering we were at Doral, we were at Quail Hollow. These are major championship style venues. Quail Hollow obviously hosting the PGA last year. Your top performers on major championship style venues, long and difficult. That is, generally speaking, what major championship courses are. Difficult and long. Your top performers: Scotty, Rory, Terrell Hatton, Tommy, Russell Henley, Harris English, Matt McNeely, Bryson, John Rahm, and Xander are your top 10 on these long and difficult courses. However, not every single major is long. Not every single major is difficult. Majority of them are. So, why don't we just take a look at who's been the best in majors in that same time frame. Going back to the beginning of last year, your top performers in majors have been Scotty, Rory, Xander, Terrell Hatton, Bryson, Harris English, Chris Goddard, John Rahm, Matt Fitz, and Sam Burns. So take that for what you will. We'll take a look at a couple of more detailed strokes gained data or data in general. We'll start with off the tee. I'm with you, Derek, in the sense that I don't think distance is mandatory. I think it's going to help. As we went through Pro Visualizer, there were some holes where if you could just flat out carry some of the bunkers, you're going to take out, the trouble of that hole. Very similar to Quail Hollow in that regard. But you're going to have to be accurate. These fairways aren't the widest, and this is a major. I do have a feeling that the rough is not going to be as simple as just long. So I kind of like looking at this total driving, which is the combination of distance and accuracy. But, for example, you've got Alex Fitzpatrick is 22nd and 5th, which is a sum of 27. He's the lowest. That's the best total. You got Cameron Young at a 53. Michael Brennan's at a 53. You see they're tied for second. So on and so forth. Your top total drivers in 2026. Alex Fitzpatrick, it's one tournament. We'll see what those numbers are like once Quail is loaded in tomorrow. But from Doral, he's the number one total driver. Cameron Young, Michael Brennan, Scotty, Minwoo Lee, Sam Stevens, Hao Tong Lee, Bobby Mack, Siwoo, Harris English, and Kurt Kitayama are your top 11. in terms of total driving. And I think that's where my lean is this week. If you want to look at just flat out carry distance, just being able to carry some of those bunkers and take the trouble out of play, Pot Guider, the law firm of Hoygaard and Hoygaard, Brennan, Michael Brennan, Minwoo Lee, Jake Knapp, Gary Woodland, Kurt Kitayama, Johnny Kiefer, and Keith Mitchell are your top 10 carry distance. Not driving distance. This is just flat out carry. Hit ball far, in air, long way. So there's that. We're definitely going to be looking at approach. We're going to put a whole lot of emphasis in approach in the last 24 rounds, and this will update because obviously we don't have the Truest in here since it ended, a few hours ago. Your top approach players the past 24 rounds: Colin Morikawa, Adam Scott, Xander, Brooks, Cameron Young, JJ Spawn, who's been on fire lately, Ludwig, Daniel Berger, Justin Rose, Alex Smalley. JJ Spawn has been excellent with his irons, and I don't expect that to be any different after his top 5 finish at Quail this week. He's gained in 3, 4, 7 straight, probably 8 straight. He's on fire. He's trending upward. Rose is trending down. He did not have a good week at the Cadillac. He didn't have a good week this week at Quail. So you got to think perhaps those McLaren irons aren't doing him justice yet. That's all I'm going to look at in approach. We might look at around the green. I really definitely want to hit putting. Rose with those new irons sucks. Yeah. We're going to look, in fact, let's go to Augusta. And let's see who putt well at Augusta. Your top putters from Augusta: Morikawa, Brian Campbell, Sam Burns, Max Homa, Harris English, Matt McCarty, Tommy putt well, Keegan, Batia, Marco Pinge. Those are your top 10 putters from Augusta. And I do think there is a lot of overlap between Augusta and Aronimink. The bent greens, severe sloping, all that stuff. So I would keep these 10 to maybe 15 players in your mind this week for putting, especially. But if we back this out, let's go all courses. I will back out the time frame all the way back to 2022. But we're looking for your top putters on bent. And I am going to go with fast. Unless we'll look at the forecast starting tomorrow, unless we see that there's a lot of rain in the forecast, the PGA of America is going to want this to be fast and firm and make it very challenging. So, your top putters on fast bent greens: Denny McCarthy, who's not had a good year. Keegan is always a threat on bent greens. Max Homa, Cameron Smith, Braden Shattuck. I think he's a PGA of America player, but he is putt well on bent greens. And it's not worth a wait on that. Billy Horschel's putt well on bent. You think about Billy on Bermuda, but Billy's putt well on bent. Justin Rose, Hovland, English, and Brian Campbell are your historical top 10 on fast bent greens. McCarty, Tommy, Sam Burns, Pearson Coody, J-Day round out your top 15 in that regard. All right. Last thing, I do want to look at par threes. Long par threes. We had one that was about, 177, I think. And then the others are 201 and above. Long par threes. We're looking at both of these. So let me clear the filters. And we're going to bring this back in. Yeah, let's go this year. Your top performers on long par threes. Very few rounds for these players. Smotherman in 2026 has been very good on these long par threes. Tommy. Nikolai Højgaard's been amazing at both of these lengths of long par threes. Like you see, Ryo Itatsune's 5th and then 105th. Minwoo Lee's been great on both of the lengths. Rasmus Højgaard. Ludwig's top 20 in both. Harry Hall basically top 30 in both. Rory. Steven Fisk. Okay. Putnam with an honorable mention, perhaps. Alex Fitzpatrick. If we sort on the 226, there's Fitz, Fisk. Anyone else jump up here? Pot Geider's not terrible. I mentioned Putnam. I mentioned Smotherman, Minwoo, Ludwig, Rory, Sepp Straka, 18th and 24th. Okay. Ryan Gerard, top 30 in both. Okay. Tommy. Harry Hall, I mentioned. Rasmus, honorable mention, I guess. Scott. So there's a look at some of these players that have been good on long par threes. And I think that's going to be decent emphasis this week. All right, last thing I want to do, and it's not going to be, exact or perfect, but I do want to show you who has generally performed best at these PGA championships. This is going back to 2019. Why 2019? That is when the PGA moved from August to May. Was 2019. So I only went back to the current schedule, and I skipped 2020. This does not include Colin Morikawa's win at TBC Harding Park. Why? 2020 was a ridiculous year. The schedule was all thrown for a loop. The Masters was in November. I'm just not dealing with that level of outlier performance. So this is 6 different PGA championships: Quail Hollow, Valhalla, Oak Hill, Southern Hills, Kiowa, and 2019 Bethpage Black. Of the players who have played more than just once, like Harry Hall, Highsmith, Gerard, they played well in the one PGA they had. Victor Hovland and Shane Lowry have been your best, and Scotty. They've played it 5 or 6 times, all averaged a top 25 finish. Rory's just behind them. 6 for 6, average finish inside the top 25. Keegan, important note, for what it's worth, Keegan did win the 2018 BMW Championship here at this course. 6 for 6. Average finish of 25th. Xander, 5 for 6, with that win at Valhalla. Colin Morikawa, 5 for 5. Again, does not include his win at TBC Harding Park, so he's played PGA Championships very well. Bryson, 4 for 5. McLaren himself, 5 for 6. Brooks, 2 wins, 5 for 6. Finau, Hoagie, Kevin Yu, these guys are alternates at the moment. That's why they're highlighted in orange. But Finau's played very well at PGA Championships. Hoagie's played well, to be fair. 4 for 5. Players who have not performed well at PGA Championships. Don't mind this. Because these are PGA professionals, their stats were not collected in terms of strokes gained. That's why you're getting this divisor by 0 error. All of these guys are PGA professionals. Trying to find guys who have played, a few of them. Of course, Duffner. Look, Sami Valimaki, 0 for 3. Been really poor. Michael Block had his one top 15 and then has missed the cut everywhere else on a PGA championship. Martin Keimer. Padraig Harrington's been bad. Davis Thompson, 0 for 2. Patrick Rogers, 1 for 3. Sung Jae, coming off a to me, unexpectedly really solid performance at Quail. Look at his performance at PGA Championships. 1 for 5. That's hideous. Jake Knapp, 0 for 2. I don't know how you could trust Jake Knapp, considering he's withdrawn a couple times recently. Same with Colin Morikawa in that regard. He's been bad. Batia's 0 for 2 in PGA Championships. Rasmus Højgaard, look at that. 3 for 4. But, man, he does not have a lot of promising finishes to show for it. Same with Daniel Berger, 3 for 4. Not a whole lot of promising finishes to show for it. Siwoo, 2 for 6 in PGA Championships. Henley's only 3 for 5. So, there's a look at some of the players who have and have not played well at PGA Championships. We'll take a deeper look into this tomorrow. We'll take a look at some historical course factors for PGA Championships in the past. But that is what I have for you all in terms of an initial research show. Thanks to Moss, Hanka, and Derek for jumping into chat. Very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. I would be remiss if I did not say Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, especially to my mother. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. Love you very much. So hopefully you degenerates celebrated Mother's Day with your mothers in your lives as well. So thanks again for all the support. Very much appreciated for all of the wagers you made this past week for the Truist and the Myrtle Beach, for all of the DFS contests you played this past week for the Truist and the Myrtle Beach. And until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.